everyone, and welcome to this SWH podcast, which is the second of our Best of 2025 podcasts. And this time we are focusing on the best crime fiction of the year. And I'm delighted to be joined by writer Callum McSorley. Hello, Callum.
Hi Ali, thanks very much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so pleased you could do it. Well, we're going to do it is we've each picked six novels to talk about. We'll also mention some that are coming out in 2026 as well. But without further ado, Callum, let's get going. What's your first choice?
My first choice is The Search for Bella Savage by
Yes.
Fode Mana.
Yep,
Um,
fantastic. I could have easily have picked that as well. I've got my
yes.
copy here. So why did you want to pick that one?
Well, it's about the Sierra Leonean community living in Edinburgh. About a woman called Hawa whose friend has gone missing, and this is kind of following a recent spate of incidents where women from the community have been found locked in the boots of cars. That's the kind of background to her friend Othello disappearing.
Hmm.
And a lot of it circles around this church that they all go to called the Lion Mountain Church, um, where there's something quite shady going on with the pastor that works there and his organization in general. And I think it was a fascinating look into this community that I didn't really know anything about going in. Fode writes with incredible insight into these things. There's a brilliant part in the book where the characters go to Sierra Leone for Hawa's sister's wedding, and that bit was just incredibly well written. And yeah, it's tense and twisty in the kind of way you expect from a thriller. But I think also there was like this kind of really I think it's very literary in the just the quality of Fode's writing and the kind of wider topics that he looks at within the story, and the roles of religion and where a woman's place is in this kind of community and that sort of thing. It's just fascinating.
I agree with you completely. One, I love when someone introduces me to an aspect of Scottish culture that I knew nothing about,
Mhm.
and that's exactly what this does, taking us into this community. And I think it's quite a brave novel to write because he really doesn't shy away from criticizing the church. And what's interesting in that bit when he goes back, or when they go back to, I'm going to say he, what I mean is in the book, they go back to Sierra Leone, it's just how you can really see how powerful the hold is. And it's about power, a lot of it, both in Edinburgh and particularly in Sierra Leone, where the kind of it's the pastor is a pastor, I think, is always,
Yeah, Pastor Ranka.
yeah, it's a kind of political figure as well. This is a person of great influence, and you see that kind of power really
Mhm.
corrupts.
Yeah,
And
Because
yeah,
he has this little fief in Edinburgh, this wee fiefdom,
yeah,
and you can tell he's a wealthy man. He owns lots of property where, when people are coming over, he puts them up in his flats for like a decent wee rate. And you can see how he kind of uses that to exert control over this quite small community in Edinburgh. And then when they travel back to the homeland, and suddenly you see him as this kind of major political figure, and he hosts this this big ceremony, and it's packed into a huge stadium, and you're like, you see the true extent of his power in that place,
yeah.
and how this kind of aspect of it in Edinburgh is like small compared to the overall thing,
And there's also questions of um, exploitation, which is not always straightforward because you've got women who are being asked to kind of hostess, if you like,
Mhm.
and this looks like exploitation. But then I think at one point one of them goes, "But have you seen my watch? I was able to get this watch. Have you seen where I live? I've got
Mhm.
this fantastic flat." So there's a kind of complexity as well on the go.
Yeah, it's nuanced. He's not just like this is bad and this is good. He's looking at it from all sides and taking into account the fact that the women are coming over from lives of poverty,
Mm,
and
yeah,
are now living very comfortably. But they have this trade-off with having to do this hostessing stuff, which is, quite seedy, and some of them are not happy with it, and some of them are fine with it, and
yeah.
or think at least that it is worth what they're getting in return. It's yeah, it's interesting.
And what's also interesting is people coming to Scotland in this case. sending a lot of the money that they earn back to the families at
Mhm.
home too. For instance, there's a wedding going on at home, and a lot of the money is going back towards that, and that's an interesting aspect as well. Just as I say, insight into a culture that I didn't know that much
Mhm.
about.
Yeah, I liked, how says that because she's living in Scotland and working there, her family think that she is really rich and wealthy, although she's a student and she's a cleaner, really.
Yeah,
So she's working on, like, she has multiple minimum wage things going on. She's living in this tiny flat that she shares, and yet her family back in Sierra Leone are asking her for all this stuff for the wedding because they think because she's gotten out of the country and got into the UK that she's now like fabulously wealthy.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
reality of her life in Scotland is very different, from what they expect.
It's a tremendous read, and I'm really looking forward to see what comes next from Fodie.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, my first choice is it's the third in Alan Gaw's Dr. Jack Cuthbert series, which is set in the 20s and 30s. This is the first one set in Glasgow. So the first two are set in London, even though Jack Cuthbert is Scottish. He's a kind of Sherlock Holmesian figure. Certainly, the way that he kind of solves things. He's a pathologist, I should say, and just at a time where pathology is really starting to change, great strides are being made in it. I spoke to Alan about the series as a whole, and he said he wanted to set it before DNA came in,
Uh-huh.
which would kind of, DNA, which might ruin everything.
It
So,
ruins everything.
yeah, it's a bit like mobile phones
Yes,
for
uh-huh.
print. But so I love the series. It's quite interesting. Alan had these written and self-published for them. I think this is the third, fourth coming next year, which I'll talk
Mhm.
about later. They were written and published, and then Polygon took them on and published them quite quickly. I think maybe
Yeah.
a year. I think something along
Yeah,
the.
yeah, I think it's one year, 1.5 years, the
Yeah,
three out. Because that was just after he won the debut prize,
that's right.
wasn't it?
That's
That Polygon picked them up.
and they're tremendous reads. I've really enjoyed them. What a great character, but not just Jack Cuthbert is a great character. The surrounding cast. He's got a fantastic housekeeper. He's got a kind of younger guy who works with him. He's got a chief of police who he kind of initially butts heads with,
Mhm.
and they kind of bond over a whiskey or two. He's quite a striking character himself. He kind of stands out in any room, taller than everyone else, kind of slightly better dressed than anyone else.
Mhm.
He had been in the army, and particularly in the first novel, there's real trauma there because of what he saw in the army. But so to go to this one, to the Shades Descend, he comes up to Glasgow. He may be going to apply for a job in Glasgow, but then he gets involved in there's a bombing, there's other crime goes on, and he comes in. But what Alan does really well in this book is to go into parts of Glasgow. He goes into the Gorbals at one point,
Mhm.
and just to see kind of ordinary people's everyday lives and really kind of explore them. He's in some ways a very tender writer. He kind of gets to the heart of individual characters and finds what kind of makes them tick and why. He wants to understand why, not just what is happening.
Mhm.
I really like these books, and it was great to have one set in Glasgow. He arrives in Central Station, and it goes up to Glasgow University and all of those things. So, which I always quite enjoy.
Are you hoping he stays in Glasgow then? Or is he going back to London? Is
He,
it?
I can tell you, not exclusively reveal, it's no secret, but he does go back to London. But
Ah,
but with I think with a heavy heart, I'm not sure. It's a bittersweet time he spends back in Glasgow. That's for
yeah.
sure. Okay, what's your next pick?
My next one is The Midnight King by Tariq Ashkenani.
Yeah.
So this book is set in Nashville, and it's about a man called Lucas Cole who goes back to Nashville after being away for a long time because his dad has just died from suicide. But the kind of the complication here is his dad is a famous author, but also maybe a notorious serial killer called the Midnight King. That is the kink in the setup.
Which is such a
Um,
brilliant idea.
it is, and it starts. I think one of my favorite things about this book is it starts with a fake author's note. I don't know, I'm going to hold it up to the camera. It looks as if it's like, it looks as if it's going to be a note from Tarek, but it's actually from Lucas Cole.
Oh, nice.
Um, and
Excellent.
it's, yeah, I love it. And because Lucas, before he dies, writes this book called The Midnight King. And it's a very strange book about these killings. And when people read it, it has this weird effect on them. And it ends this, the author's note ends, this book is a work of fiction. It is not a confession. So that's the opening of the book, and that just hooked me straight away. And from there, the book just kind of grabs you by the scruff of the neck and really pulls you through. Also, Nashville is just such a it's a great setting. It's a place I would love to go to.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because uh, your two novels, Paperboy and Squeaky Clean, are absolutely set in Glasgow, as
Mhm.
we've spoken about before. Um, and do you think that's a limiting thing in terms of selling books elsewhere? Because Nashville, everyone kind of
Mhm.
thinks that they know of Nashville. Not maybe everyone thinks they know of Glasgow, but I'm not sure that's to the same extent.
Yeah, Nashville's a place like London or Edinburgh where like you don't have to go there to have a really quite strong idea of what it is like to be there in that environment. Glasgow maybe less so. Although Glasgow, like I could say there's all these kind of post-industrial places in the UK
Yeah,
that are have all these similar flavors. Manchester, Newcastle, Glasgow, all these kind of places do
absolutely.
have similarities. And if you're from there, I think it's easy to kind of dip into those worlds if you're reading a book set in one of those kinds of cities. Limiting potentially, yeah, I don't know.
I
Kind of,
would love to. I haven't read the book, which I must do because it was a prize winner, wasn't it? At bloody
it was, yeah, it won the McIlvanney this year.
McMahon. So congratulations, Tarek. Um, and I must read it. But I'd love to know if that was a deliberate choice or whether that was just purely through.
Well, I think Tarek's all his books so far have been set in the US, but they've been set in fictional towns that he's made up
Right.
himself.
Right.
So this is the first time he's used a real place. But yeah, but still in the US. But he's got a book out next month actually. It's set in Edinburgh.
Oh yeah.
Interestingly, so he's coming home for that one. Which would be quite interesting to read, I think. How he kind of conjures up Edinburgh.
And in
Um,
your description, you kind of hinted that there's something, if not supernatural, something unknown and unsettling going on in the book.
yeah, it's not out and out supernatural. There just seems to be this uncanny thing with this book, and when people read it, it gives them weird feelings. It has this strange effect on people. But yeah, it's just this quite propulsive kind of serial killer narrative that runs through it as well, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a great read.
That's one I definitely have to read and soon, especially if there's another one coming out in soon set in Edinburgh. Well,
Yeah, well, he's got the Hollow Boys coming out next year as well, which is back in the States.
wow. And that's another thing about crime fiction, since we're concentrating on that, is the pace that some people write them. You know, that it seems to me perhaps well, I'm going to call literary fiction, but I don't, that there's not the same pressure. There seems to be, if you're writing a series in particular,
hmm
they want, publishers want you to get the next one out quickly.
Yeah, it is a thing. Yeah, I guess just because once see if you're sequel writing, because you've got all your characters and your settings and stuff in place, you're kind of coming up with the plot, and it's easier to do than, if you're a literary writer and you're writing standalone novels, coming
Yeah.
up with completely different ideas every single time. You can see how that it would take longer, to do that sort of thing.
And we'll talk about Doug Johnson later on.
hmm
But Doug's off. He's got about three on the go, I think, at one time.
Yeah. He's interesting, I think, because he did loads of standalone
Yeah,
crime novels and then started a series. And usually people do that the other way around. It's quite interesting.
that's true. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. One of the reasons I mentioned Supernatural is my mixed choice is Michael J. Malone's The Howling, which is kind of as much horror as it is
Mhm.
crime. So this again is the third in a series. This time the Annie Jackson mysteries. The previous ones were the Murmurs and the Torments. Annie Jackson has a kind of second sight, if you like. She sees when people are going to die and how they're going to die. That's problematic, as you can imagine, but it feeds into a lot of the plot, particularly in the first two. And I spoke to Michael about after the second book, after the torments. And he did say when he started this series, he wanted to bring in werewolves. And his publisher went, "Oh no, 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 no. I don't think so, Michael." But but and he gets his wish in this, The Howling. It's not
He had to get the first two books done
and
first.
doing
Yeah.
well. And I'm not giving anything away. It's called The Howling, and there's a wolf on the cover, you know. So it's like, but I absolutely love these. I mean, they're real page turners for a
Mhm.
start. And I was a big fan of horror writing when I was younger. I used to, I mean, that was my main thing, I think, for a long time. So it's great to have kind of not horror writing in a kind of Stephen, well, actually kind of in a Stephen King way, but not in a kind of James Herbert, you know, Clive Barker gore and
Mhm.
all that stuff. It is very much thrilling, and there is crime, and actually international crime, but it's linked to kind of odd beliefs and kind of pagan beliefs and kind of witchery, for want of a better word. And this time around, you know, we get the werewolf thrown in as well. And yeah, I can't wait for it. This is one of these series that when you finish it, and it's a good thing that they're written quite quickly, because I think he's doing one of these a year. I
Mhm.
seem to read it at the same time every year, and I look forward to it and go, yeah, if it's autumn, it must be time for
Time for the new Malone. Yeah.
Lord, yeah, absolutely. And you know, he's done a lot of other stuff in the past, you know, series in the past as well, which have been more straightforward, almost gritty crime novels. But I think he's having the most fun writing the Annie
Mhm.
Jackson mysteries and just, you know, letting his imagination kind of run riot.
Yeah, I mean, I like this kind of. I feel like there is a kind of broadening out of what you can do with crime at the
Definitely,
moment, and you
definitely.
can bring in all sorts of different things. And which is so one of my choices is it's Sleeper Beach by Nick Harkaway. I don't
Right.
actually have a copy of the book, so this is the first one in the series. It's called
Okay.
Titanium Noir,
Okay.
and this is it's a hard-boiled detective story, but with a kind of sci-fi twist. So it's set in a fictional city in the US, and it's set in a future where this company or family company have created this chemical or drug that you can take to allow you to essentially live forever if you want to.
Right.
So like it makes you younger. You would say you would take it when you were 70, you would go through the process and you would be about 20, or you would have like the youth of a 20-year-old, but you go through like puberty again every time, so you keep growing. So they call these people titans, not just because some of them are hundreds of years old, but because every time they go through this process, they get physically bigger. So some of them have been through it so many times that they're like
Wow.
absolutely ginormous and take up a full room. And so the first book, Titanium Noir, is about a private detective called Cal Sounder, who's he's I say a detective, he's a sort of fixer. When things go these all these because the treatment's so expensive, the Titans are all very, very wealthy elites. It's not for ordinary people. So he's a sort of fixer for these folk when things go wrong. And so it's to the start of Titanium Noir, a Titan is found dead, and he is called into to see how this happens. And it's very Raymond Chandlery, but with
Right.
this wee sci-fi thing. That's I love it. It's got fascinating characters. It's really well written. Yeah, and so the second one, Sleeper Beach, Cal goes out to investigate the drowning of a young woman on this seaside town where one of these titans kind of lived during the boom eras before the town kind of all went to shit, really, and all the money left. And so he goes out there, and yeah, it's a fascinating look at these kind of forgotten places.
It almost sounds a little bit Blade Runner.
A wee bit, yeah, yeah, a wee bit Blade Runner-y. It's a bit more. I don't know, I find Blade Runner a wee bit cold almost.
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, I really like both the book and the
Yeah.
film, but I feel this is more.
Oh,
He's quite funny. Like the character he's got quite a sharp, sarcastic sense of humor, but it's quite he's got quite a tender humanity to him as well. You know, he's not a pure jaded, bitter man. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And
And I think
he's
sorry, I was going to say, I think what you're saying about the kind of fusing of genres, particularly with crime fiction, is really, really interesting. I think if you look at people that have won McIlvanney Prize is a good example, but also the Bloody Scotland Debut Prize and other prizes, you can see that shift. You can see the kind of variety has kind of changed, I think.
Hmm.
And in our selection, actually, I'm just looking at some of them here. You can see that as well. And maybe previously, Ian Banks famously had his Ian Banks novels and his Ian M. Banks novels, and
Hmm.
never the twain really shall meet. Although they did in some places, the Crow Road is not the Crow Road. The Bridge is very much a kind of sci-fi novel as well as a literary novel. And I wonder if people aren't so hung up on those divisions anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think it is that, and I think writers are more interested in, yeah, kind of bringing different things together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, actually, my next choice is a book which is a crime book, but I'm not sure it's really a crime book. It's the one. It's Liam McIlvaney's The Good Father, and I've already spoken about it on the Best Books podcast with Vicky Riley, which is out now. But the reason for that is it's a fantastic read, but for a lot of it, it's kind of a domestic novel. A crisis. What happens in it is you have Gordon and Sarah Rutherford son goes missing. He goes out onto the beach, set in the west coast of Scotland, kind of Ayrshire way. Him and the dog are on the beach, and then he doesn't come back. And the first huge part, it's kind of split into two, maybe three parts, but really two parts. And the first bit is a family, a couple, and particularly Gordon, coping with the loss of a child, the kind of worst thing you can imagine. And there's that mix of hope and guilt and grief and not knowing and there's a whole load of emotions, and Liam writes quite beautifully about all of those things. Must have been a hard bit to write, actually. And I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but let's just say the next part, the second part, is more like what you would call the usual crime novel, or something that you might
Mhm.
expect from Liam. The pace changes, and a lot of things change. But it's quite an astonishing book. Certainly one of my favourites of the year, and in many a year. I've always been a fan of Liam McIlvaney's writing, but I think this is a different level for me.
Hmm.
Have
Yeah,
you?
I think I read an article of him, and he said he thinks it was like the best thing that he's done,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
would agree.
and
And previously his books have been kind of police procedurals and that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Yeah, historical, isn't
Yeah,
it? Was
yeah,
what he'd done before. Yeah.
absolutely. And so it was great to kind of bring, and this is clearly a very personal novel as well. It's kind of written in the area that Liam's originally from. There are characters who I have asked him this. People said, "Is that me?" You've got those kind of
Hmm.
closeness between real characters and fictional characters. And the central character, Gordon, teaches Scottish literature at the University of Glasgow, and Liam
Hmm.
teaches Scottish literature in New Zealand. He has taught over here, and there's just all these real life connections. And I think it is his best novel. I have a feeling it might be his most freeing novel as well. That he really kind of got to grips with a lot of things too. Yeah, I really do recommend it as
It's reminding me of like To the Dogs by Louise Welsh.
yeah,
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 it kind of reminds me of that, like because that's a sort of campus novel,
yeah.
but the guy has a wayward son and a shady past, so it's crimey in places, but it's yeah, it's also yeah, you could say this is a literary novel, and yeah,
Yeah, no,
reminds me of that.
absolutely. It kind of, I think it's again brave in a different way, but to have a first section that could be a standalone novel
Hmm.
about loss and grief for quite a real chunk, it's let me just check the page. So you're talking just over 400 pages, so it's a decent size. And to go that long, I mean, I would love to know if the publisher went, can we speed things up and get to, get to some murders or something like that, whatever it might be, get to some real crime. Um, but it's all the better for it. And
Hmm.
it really makes the impact when it comes is sharper for it and kind of heavier for it too. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. What's your next choice?
My next is The Malt Whiskey Murders
I could have picked that as well, I have to say.
by Natalie Jane Clark. Yeah, I don't know anyone who's read this book and not really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's about what's Ailey and Morag, who are a couple who are taking on the whiskey industry, and they buy an old distillery that they're going to do up and start brewing their own whiskey. But they're not long there before they find two dead bodies that have been stuffed into whiskey barrels and sort of preserved in there for who knows how long.
It's
And
such a
then,
brilliant idea
yeah,
again. It's such
really, really great intro, great hook. And yeah, Ailey kind of wants to investigate this. Morag very much wants to bury it and not think about it at all. And this causes huge strain. It's, yeah, the book is partly the investigation and partly this enormous strain that it's putting on their relationship and how it kind of fractures them
yeah,
as the story goes along. But
because
yeah,
the
great
two,
hook, well written.
yeah, absolutely. They have two very different personalities. You
Mhm.
know, one loves a spreadsheet, and the other one, loves
Yeah,
the.
they're quite chalk and cheese, opposites
Yeah.
attract sort of thing. Yeah, Ailey's quite scattered and impulsive.
And
And
you've got this other narrative, which I won't say anything about, in case we kind of give things away, which also
Mhm.
runs through it as well, which
Yes,
kind of unfolds over time, which I think is really interesting too.
yeah, and it uses the second person in the style of Ian Banks in Complicity, which
Yeah,
is really, oh, I think, yeah, I really like that when it's well done. It's one of those things you can't overuse too much, but when it's done right, yeah, works really well.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think I think Natalie nailed it.
I think you're right. And um, it really, I just again spoke to Natalie about this novel and asked her, is this kind of wish fulfillment? You want to run a distillery on your own? Because she's really into her whiskies too. And she said, well, yeah, I guess it probably is. But also, what I don't know whether this was deliberate or just the way of it, but tapping into a market. You know, you do book readings in distilleries and being asked to go to all these things. It's a brilliant kind
I
of
know I'm considering writing some sort of murder mystery about like chocolatiers. I don't know, something like that, a donut factory. Something I don't
backsteel soup or something like that.
know.
But in all seriousness, we know how crime fiction is so popular in Scotland, and we know how what an international audience whiskey
Mhm.
has as well. So I'm hoping this kind of reaches a really big audience. It really deserves to, as well. And there's lots of other strands in it too. About a women in this very male-dominated industry as
Mhm.
well, and small town or village even living, and you know what that means, out being an outsider.
Yeah, in a small
And
community. Yeah.
yeah, there's lots of things, so much going on in it. It's a tremendous debut, isn't it? It's Natalie's debut.
Yeah. She was nominated for the debut prize this year.
That's right.
Um,
And I think she got this through Pitch Scotland at Bloody
yeah,
Scotland.
Pitch Perfect. She did. Yeah. I think she. I don't know if she won her pitching session, but she definitely, I think, within about a week of doing it, had an agent and a book deal, and it was all go go go. Um,
Well, while we're talking Bloody Scotland related novels, my next one is Francine Toon's Bluff. Now, Francine won the McIlvanney Prize in 2020, which was, I can't believe it was that long ago, for Pine. And this is well, it's not the follow-up, it's a completely different book, but this is the next novel. You've got two narrative strands going on. You've got that of Joni in 2013, and then you've got Cameron in 2023. And Cameron leaves the small town where they both are from, and then 10 years later he's back and he wants to find out what happened to Joni. They had been close friends, and he feels kind of guilty that he hasn't stayed in touch. And that's where the kind of mystery starts, because Joni seems to be nowhere around and no one really wants to talk about her or what may or may not have happened to her. There is a scene that happens on the beach on the last day of school, the last night of school. It's this small town, which I think is St Andrews, but it's never really named, I don't think, in Fife. They're on the beach, and there's lots of misunderstandings and rumours and all those things that you can imagine. And it's a heady time, and that kind of holds the secret to what unfolds and why Joni is no longer around. And these two different strands kind of are interwoven brilliantly together, because you're learning things as Cameron learns them as well. It doesn't give away anything until it has to, and at the right time. And then it's a fantastic a conclusion to. I mean, I really like Francine Toon's writing, and I'm delighted that she's back with a new novel. Pine was a kind of huge success. It really took off. Um, But yeah, I really think this is great. I kind of think of it almost as, the movie Grosse Point Blank,
Yes, yeah.
where he kind of goes back. John Cusack's a hitman goes back for his 10-year school reunion. Well, there's kind of shades of that, but with Scottish Gothic linked in
Mhm.
there. Yeah, it's a very Scottish novel, and in some ways not a very Scottish novel too, or maybe just generationally not. But I can remember my last day of school. We got that ran down to Troon on the beach, so there was kind of echoes of that as well, and I guess nostalgia and trying to rediscover your past, which is very different to how you remember it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of that. Cameron thinks he knows what happened that night and how relationships were, and actually turns out he's completely wrong about all of it.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, actually. I would I say like Francine is in that same camp as Liam McIlvanney, and that he's got this kind of literary and crime thing going on, kind of mixed together.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
because Francine's obviously definitely not in that book a year crime series thing, you know?
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's great that it's come back, and I just we're going to talk. Well, following up a successful book, as you know, Squeaky Clean was definitely a successful book. Pine was definitely a successful book. Is there pressure on that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I guess when your first book comes out, you don't really know what to expect, and you're just hoping that it doesn't disappear. You know, that's really you're like, yeah, that is the worry. And then yeah, when it comes down to the second one, if the first one did pretty well, then yeah, you're kind of you want the same for it, you know, or better. So yeah, it's one of those things you have to try not to think about when you're actually writing, because it'll just I didn't start writing Paperboy until it was after I won the McIlvanney for Squeaky Clean. Like I just started planning it, but I didn't have a contract for it or anything like that, so I'd not started writing anything, which is why there was like a 2 year gap between my first and second book. But yeah, there was definitely a bit of like expectation, I guess.
We'll talk more about that later on. But what's your next pick?
My next pick is The Weekenders by David F. Ross.
If I have my copy here, tremendous.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love this book. It was brilliant. It's historical crime-ish. Yeah, it's got elements of both historical and historical crime together. It's about a place called Raskin House, owned by wealthy people. The house kind of passes from hand to hand over the years, and this in this book it chiefly concerns a man called James E. Campbell, who's become an important figure in Glasgow in the 60s. He came from poverty, and you see a bit of his childhood and how he's some shady history. Yeah, he's quite a twisted guy in the 60s, and you kind of see how this comes about. Um, but it's split into three parts, and the first part I think was one of my favorites because it had the chief character of Minto, who
yeah,
is trying to find out what happened to a Polish girl that disappeared, and he thinks it's something to do with this James E. Campbell. Um, but there's powerful forces sort of working against him. And Minto he's a journalist, but he's what he actually is an ex-footballer. He's a footballer, he gets injured, and so someone gets him a gig as a sports reporter after because he can't play anymore. And I just thought I really like kind of non-standard detectives in detective fiction, and I love this kind of setup for his character and how he comes to be involved in this investigation from a kind of left field place, you know. I also really I like the glimpse into what the life of like a footballer was like in the 60s, you know, because he's playing at the top of the league in Scotland, but he's still going down to the local pub. He's not really, he's got some money from it, but he's not wealthy, but he is famous around the city. You know, it was just a fascinating look at this particular time, you know, and you compare it to what the life of like a Premiership footballer would be now, you know, it's just worlds apart. And
yeah.
I,
Yeah, I mean, at the time, you couldn't retire on the money, so it was either going to be right, drive a taxi, run a pub,
yeah.
whatever. And he's got this in with journalism.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and much too young as well. Football has a is a young retirement age anyway, but he gets injured and is out before he's really kind of reached his what he feels would be, his kind of peak. He's missed that. And into the bargain he loses his wife around that time and everything. It's all going wrong for him until and he ends up on this investigation that he stumbled into uh, while at a trainee. Really, he ends up shadowing the crime reporter just to kind of help him kind of learn on the job, and that's how he ends up in this investigation. And all these shadowy figures are suddenly against him, and he barely really knows what he's doing, but he knows that it's important that he does it. I just found him to be a fascinating character.
It's trying to find purpose when the purpose he had has kind of been taken
Yes.
from
Yeah,
him.
100%. Yeah. What am I to do with my life now? You
And
know?
Davy Ross writes some of the best characters, the most memorable characters. All of his books have these real individual, quirky, memorable people.
Mhm.
And there's not just one, there's not just Minto, there's others.
Yeah, yeah, because in the second part we go through a bit of the war in Italy with Jamesy, and we see what happens to him during World War II and how he comes to own Raskin House and be the big man in Glasgow. And the third part, we have Doodle, who's a court sketch artist
The
who's
brilliant guy.
living in poverty in the East End, and he's really strict, kind of Orthodox Christian, isn't he? Like and he goes door to door flying people and keeps getting himself beaten up harassing people in the street with his beliefs and things like that. Yeah, again, another very unusual detective character that you wouldn't expect. And do you know, like the whole thing? It reminds me of like James Ellroy, who's one of my favorite writers. I think this is, these are the if James Ellroy grew up in Glasgow, this is the kind of stuff he would be writing. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it is incredibly dark in places as well.
Yes,
You know, the
yeah,
things that
pitch
happen,
black.
absolutely pitch black. But he writes, I think David F. Ross, I love all his books. He just seems to get better and better
Mhm.
as he goes on. And The Weekenders, it was right at the start of the year it came out, I think January or February
Yeah,
when I read it. But some of the things have stayed with me
yeah,
ever since. Perhaps not in a good way, I'm not
yeah.
sure. But
No.
certainly the characters have stayed with me, definitely.
Yeah, he's an excellent writer. David Ross is just incredible.
And and one of the themes of the book is kind of looking at privilege and power and how that's abused. And it's a similar thing in my next choice, which is Denise Mina's The Good Liar. I've just finished reading this, so it's fresh in my mind. And there's a character called Dr. Claudia O'Sheil, who is a blood spatter expert. Again, it's lovely when it's something
Mhm.
slightly different, as you say. And she's asked to go and look at this crime in kind of Knightsbridge area in London, but wealthy family, famous family, murder scene. One of the characters is taken in, but her evidence is used to convict him, but she's not convinced, and she goes searching. And then, well, as she searches for what might be the truth, she's kind of pushed against by the kind of ruling classes and the moneyed classes and the inequality that's there. I think all of Denise's novels, I'm a massive fan of her writing, right, going right back to Garnet Hill, which is just
Yeah, same.
incredible.
The Long Drop is one of my absolute favorite
But there's
books.
always
Yeah.
something political, isn't there? There's always
Yeah.
examination of inequality and immorality, I think, going on.
Hmm.
So this time around, there's two narrative strands. One takes place over kind of days and weeks and longer, and one takes place over minutes and seconds. So you've got these two different paces, which is really, really clever. And as you get back to the one which is minutes and seconds, you're almost like you're taking up a level.
Hmm.
You go, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And right through, you just don't know which way is going to go to the very last page. And at the last page, I was almost punching the air. It was just such a brilliant final page. I loved it. Again, someone who writes great characters. And there's Claudia's sister in this, Gina, who lives with her and has drug problems and other issues. It's fantastic. Just a really memorable, different person from nearly everyone else in the book. There's a lot of them. Again, really strong, memorable characters throughout, taking a kind of type, not a stereotype, but a type, and twisting it into something absolutely believable. Yeah, the Good Liar, and Blood washes off, but guilt stains. I love
Yeah, it's a good tagline.
things.
Yeah, I
And
guess it's this the kind of I guess the one of the things she's investigating in this book is about forensics itself and its reliability, which is fascinating because obviously,
yeah,
in real life it's held up to a very high standard in court. But as as Denise has pointed out when she's been talking about her book, as we go on in time, these techniques go out of date and we realize they're not actually as good as we thought they were, and convictions start to look unsafe. And this continues on, and now we're very certain about DNA and things like that. And you can look at it as, from a crime writer's perspective, we use forensics all the time to convict to convict our villains and stuff like that. So then to have someone kind of look at this and be like, actually, also this is about blood spatter evidence not being very good.
yeah,
And yeah, and it's it might actually be quack science,
yeah,
at the heart of it. Because yeah, I think there's probably loads of people that have been convicted on things that are actually it's the testimony of one expert who says this is what it's like, and the jury's just like, well, you're the expert, it's very convincing. When actually, that one person could be wrong. There was I not long ago there was in the news that a genetic disorder had been found that could account for cot deaths.
right,
And
yeah,
this actually exonerated several women who had been sent to prison for killing their children because they'd had like three cot deaths in a row.
yeah,
And the evidence at the time, or the expertise at the time, said this was just not possible. Like statistically, they thought there was no genetic cause for cot death. So they thought if this happens three times on the bounce, there's foul play happening. And so women were convicted off the basis of that expert's idea. It was just that I think it was mostly this one man that kept being used as an expert in these cases. And just recently, a genetic condition was found that can cause cot death and can cause it to happen again and again. So it suddenly these convictions were obviously completely unsafe. So it's a fascinating subject in general to
it's
look at.
fascinating. It's also terrifying. I think
Well, yeah, very, yeah,
what's really interesting with The Good Liar is you've actually got the character who's got the most to lose investigating herself rather than someone
yes.
else coming in from the outside. And I think that gives it a real power.
Yeah, it's got that moral quandary. It's not just like one person doing their job because it's their job.
Exactly.
Mhm.
What's your sixth choice, I think?
Yeah, my sixth choice is Tommy the Bruce by James Yorkston, which I don't have my own copy of because I lent it to a friend and he took it to Morocco on holiday and the whole thing melted in the sun and fell apart. Which I think is quite appropriate for this book that it can't stand going going anywhere hot. So Tommy the Bruce is a guy called Tommy. He's running this family hotel by himself in the country. It's quite dilapidated and run down. It's not very busy. He's kind of just getting by, living day to day. He's quite depressed. He's lonely. He's then Fiona, a girl who used to be local to the area, comes back, and she moves into the hotel with him, and she just changes his life completely and utterly for the better. But with her comes some baggage from back in the day, including this really awful ex-boyfriend who's just got out the jail. And yeah, it's about Tommy, this kind of hapless figure, gets dropped in way in over his head. I think all the characters really actually by the end of it realize that they're in over their heads and whatever it is that they're doing at the time, not just Tommy. But he's just such a great character. You really, when things go bad for him, you feel really bad. You're like, I don't know how James can do this to this poor man. That's how I felt. Like and the ex-boyfriend he's awful, an awful man. I was reading this on a plane, and there was bits with this guy in it, and I was like, I wanted to get up my seat so I could pace about and kind of walk out the energy a bit because I was just so and like frustrated and annoyed at this man's behavior towards Tommy and Fiona and what they had to put up with.
Really. And
Um,
also her mother is an incredible
yes,
character too. Oh my goodness.
yeah, the mother-in-law.
That's the mother-in-law, that's right. It's not
Yeah,
her.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
Fiona and her mum don't have a great
yeah.
relationship,
No,
and
I mean, you know,
Tommy's in the mother-in-law's even
when she kind
worse.
of plonks herself in the pub in the hotel. It's a brilliant book, absolutely. So many great scenes in it. As you say, how could you do this to this man? You know, even to the suit he has to wear, which is kind of badly
Yeah.
fitting and everything. It's the humiliation upon
Uh-huh.
humiliation. But you're always on his side and kind of rooting for this, I guess, hapless character, certainly when we first meet him. And yeah, it's coming. It's a while since I've read it, but it's coming back to me now. You know, when he kind of finds himself in the middle of nowhere, free,
Yeah.
kind of left to die, I guess. And yeah, so many things happened to him, but it's and what I loved about it was having worked in catering myself. Some of the scenes in the hotel and behind the bar and everything rings
Mhm.
so true. I hate to say it for people who read it, um, and yeah, but you meet this guy who's kind of just hanging on in every way, and Fiona changes his life, but you're just not sure of her intentions, at least to begin with. You know,
Yeah.
and
And Tommy's got this kind of feeling like he knows something's off, but he doesn't want to lose her, and he doesn't really want to rock the boat because she's so good for him in other ways.
yeah.
He's willing to put up with a lot, I guess, to keep her with him.
and
Um,
and he'll do anything for her, as is proved. And
yes, yeah, certainly. And the writing has like this great lyricism to it, great rhythm, which I think you would expect from James Yorkston being a musician. I think that comes through in a really nice way.
yeah, I would agree with you. Um, and actually, talking to you about it, I'd love to go back and read it again because it's a while since I've read it, and it just was sensational. It's very funny in places as well.
Yes,
There's a really
incredibly so.
darkly comic
Yeah,
about this character, that would make a great character on screen. I think you can almost
yeah.
visualize him as that. My sixth choice is Callum McSorley, Paperboy. And I'm
Thank
not
you.
just picking this because you're here. I promise you that. You know how much I enjoy your books. It seems daft to me telling you what it's about when you're sitting there, but it's another Alison McCoist novel following on from Squeaky Clean. Things have changed since Squeaky Clean. Is it a year later, Callum?
Just about, yeah, just about a year or so. Let's say the
So
timeline's hazy, I'll say.
yeah, Alison McCoist has been promoted. That's the kind of central character, if you've like. And in this book, I think I said to you when we spoke about it, it feels that you've turned everything up a notch. You've kind of gone, well, I know what made Squeaky Clean good, and I'm going to, you know, add to that. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, I would say I think a lot of that comes from the way it was written. Squeaky Clean was like a novella, and I kept adding things to it so it became a novel. It kind of patched together like that, and then there was a lot of editing and shifting around the things at the end. Sort of post-production, if you will. Whereas I outlined this one, I knew I wanted to, that I was writing a novel. I knew a lot about it. I knew my main character really well. I knew the voice and the style that I was aiming for. And I think so that helped me make something that just felt much tighter, more streamlined, but with all the
Yeah,
hopefully what I thought was good about the first book kept within it. So yeah, I would say yes. Anytime you're doing a sequel to something, you want to kind of step it up
yeah.
another notch, and that is the way I kind of went about it and hoped that it worked.
And
Um,
both novels are very much Glasgow novels. Not just with the place and a really strong sense of place, but the language and the sense of humor as well, I would say. And do you think that was something that you've just innately learned coming from, being brought up in Glasgow and all those things, or is it something that you had to really think about?
I mean, I think like the patter between people
Yeah,
and stuff like that is all just kind of based on the way you hear people talking around Glasgow, your friends, your family, the way people tell stories to each other. I grew up watching Chew and the Fat and all these kind of comedy shows. It's yeah, all this stuff kind of just filtered into it. I did when I set about Squeaky Clean, I knew I wanted to write something that was funny. The two things that I wanted it to be really gory and horrible, and I wanted it to be funny, and I wanted those two things to be together. And that's I think what I came to do that I didn't realize at first was to make it more emotional than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, that kind of came about as I was writing it. I was like, I need some real emotion to the story to make people care, because if it's just gory and just funny, it could be slapstick and funny. But yeah, I needed that element too. But yeah, I think the jokes and humor and stuff just kind of yeah came from that.
Because you've got this central character as well in Alison McCoy's too. People don't really like her. People take against her. So you've got this character that, really has to win others over
Mhm.
and also win readers over, I guess.
Yeah.
But why is everybody treating her like this?
I don't know. I just quite like an abrasive character. Do you know what I mean? That's not necessarily instantly likable to people. It's almost like a challenge, I guess. If you want to try and get people, I'm always on Ali's side from the start. Even though I make horrible things happen to her, and I love them. I just like her attitude of superiority to other people was just generally funny. I think I'm not sure she's generally earned it as much as she thinks she has. Although she's right, like her best quality as a detective is probably just her doggedness.
Yeah.
She just keeps coming back for more, no matter how bad things get. But I don't know that she's necessarily any sort of detecting genius or anything like that. But she's tenacious, I guess. But yeah, I just liked her being fed up with everyone all the time. It was just quite funny to write. I really did you ever see the TV series Guilt with
Yes, I
Mark
love
Bonner
Gil.
in it? I love Mark Bonner has the best expression of like I am surrounded by idiots. Like he just does it on his face and he doesn't even to say anything. Anytime the brother character speaks and says something stupid, it cuts to Mark Bonner's face just doing this look and it's perfect. And I guess Ali is that kind of character as well. She has this kind of feeling of the only person that can do this right is me sort of attitude and everyone else is just in her way.
And I mean, there's a real strong sense of place, as I mentioned, but there's also a real strong sense of people. And I was wondering to what extent you borrow from. Do you think writers nearly always borrow from people they know in real life or people they've encountered in real life?
Yeah, I think it's hard not to for that to filter in some way. You could consciously try and avoid it, but when you create a character, there's always the spark of an idea for there somewhere, and that's got to come from somewhere. Maybe sometimes it's from yourself, and the character has some sort of quality that you project onto them from yourself, and other times it's going to be coming from people that you know or strangers even that you've just met one time, funny things that someone said that just kind of starts the idea for a character and brings them from there.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. They both are. And listeners, if you want to know more, there is a podcast with Callum over at SWH, and we talk all about the books for much longer. But that's our six each picked and done and dusted, as they say. But we're going to talk a little bit about ones which are coming in the new year. What do you want to kind of mention, Callum?
Yeah, so I've got a few. Um, so I think this Death in Glasgow by Eva McRae out in January.
Okay,
So this is a new crime series by Lynn McEwen is the name that she
okay,
usually goes under.
okay.
So this is a new one about a girl that's pushed off a platform in Glasgow Central. I was reading this on the train going into town one day and like going past the platform 9 sign. It was very creepy. But yeah, it's a great whodunit. A lot of emotional heart to that one. January as well. We've got I'll Be Watching You by Deborah Masson. So this is set up in Aberdeen and is about a CCTV operator who is yeah, I don't really want to say too much
No,
about
no,
that.
no,
It's
that's
it's
fine. We can just leave them.
very creepy and very twisty. Do you want to? I've got quite a
Oh,
few. Do you want
yeah, go
to
through them all, and
go
then
on?
I'll go through
Cool.
mine. Yep.
Cool. So I've got February is a bad place. I've not got a proper copy. This is just it's not got the proper cover on it by Francis Crawford.
Oh no,
This
someone
is
Vicky Riley mentioned that to me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this is brilliant. I'm going to put my neck out and say it's going to be on Bloody Scotland Awards lists and might even win them this them 2026 because it's fantastic. It's set in Postle Park in the 70s and is about a teenage girl called Janie who discovers a body when she's out walking her dog called Sid Vicious. And she lives with her gran Maggie, and between the two of them, they get caught up in this investigation of who killed this local girl. And it's the voices that she has for the two characters are just brilliant. I think she brings like the 70s Glasgow to life without it being like nostalgic,
Right.
which I think is kind of key to it, but it feels to me very realistic. And yeah, just what two excellent characters. They have that yeah non-standard detective thing going on,
Right.
and yeah, brilliant read. Then in April, there's the reissue of The Ossians by Doug
Yeah.
Johnson. So this was his second book, and this
I
is coming.
remember that from the first time around. It's a tremendous
Yeah,
book. Absolutely.
I love this book. I read this in 2012 when I was doing my
Yeah.
dissertation.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote to Doug to ask him a few questions about it, and he was very kindly wrote back to me about the Ossians. I read it a few times then. It's about a band going about Scotland. The singer Connor has some drug debts to a local hard guy, and to pay them off, he's acting as a courier as they travel around
Mhm.
the far-flung parts of the country. You know, they go way up to like Thurso and Ullapool, and they're really gigging in these out-the-way places. But a lot of it is about him as a musician or a singer, and quite a lot of it is about Scottish national identity. That's kind of what Doug is taking on, I would say, in this book. And reread it recently when I heard the reissue was coming out, and still brilliant, still stands up. I think, uh, yeah, I think still it's still got really important things to say about Scottish culture in it that are still important, nearly 20 years after Doug wrote the book.
Absolutely. And of course, Doug, been in bands himself, still a
Mhm.
musician now, of course, is in Crime Loving Criminals. Is that's their name?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
fun-loving criminals.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the images or the imagery of touring is, in the back of a van and all that.
Yeah, through these
And
like
the
awful
gritty
little
and
pubs.
grimness of it is just
Yeah.
vivid. And there's a scene which always sticks with me is the killing of the seagulls. He
Oh,
drops.
it's awful. It's in Aberdeen, I think, that bit. Oh, it's terrible.
Oh dear,
Or
oh dear.
Dundee, maybe it's Dundee,
I
actually.
can't remember. I just
Oh,
remember how it happens and
it's
what.
aw it is awful. But yeah, like so I was playing in bands at that time as well in 2012. So I was obsessed with this book. I was like, oh, I really want to despite all the awful things that happened to the Aussians on their terrible, ill-fated tour, I was still like, oh, I would love to go on a tour around Scotland. It would be
Yeah,
great.
the kind of sticky carpets and the
Yeah, yeah.
people chatting over your set and all those kind
Uh-huh.
of terrible,
Yeah, and I
terrible.
think all the kind of musicians that the band talk about listening to and stuff were all stuff that I really liked at the time, like the Hold Steady and Silver Jews and all these sort of all American bands that I really liked at the time. Yeah,
I'll,
so I'm excited about that coming out again and new people reading it and
I'll just jump in here because since we're talking about Doug, he's also got the Seventh in the Skelf series coming out
yes,
this next year. And I'd love that series. For those that don't know, it's three generations of the same family. Again, unusual detectives because they run a cemetery or not a cemetery, is that what?
funeral home.
Funeral home, that's it.
Yeah,
Funeral home, but they're all, and one of them's the youngest is at university, and you've got the matriarch is fantastic. These three separate characters, often dealing with different crimes that then come together, that can run together. Seventh in a series is was well done, and it keeps you. Every one of them's a great read. So I cannot wait for that when it comes out. And Doug is going to be. We've already set it up. Doug's going to come on the Scots Way podcast next year to kind of talk about everything he's done.
yeah.
Ossians, the series which is just finished, the Transcendent Tide books, the sci-fi books that he did,
Yeah, they were great as well.
and also the Skelf series too. So I'm really looking forward to that. Do you have
Uh,
others to
my last one is in May. Yeah, this is coming out the same day as my next book actually. For
I've
Good
got
or
a copy
Bad.
of that too.
Yeah, this is quite ugly one evening. This is they're the latest Jack Parlebane book by Chris Brookmyre. It's been a while since Parlebane's been about, I
It
think.
is.
And this is on the 30th anniversary of his very first book that's going to be coming out. So it's fantastic. It's Parlebane goes on this cruise ship to sort of investigate this family who made their money from like a puppet TV show. I was like, in my mind, it's like a sci-fi thing. In my mind, I was thinking of like Jerry Anderson, Captain. I loved Captain Scarlet growing up. So it's that in my mind, it's that kind of show, and it's this family that I think they're kind of about to be bought over by kind of wealthy right wing tech blowhard kind of guy. And there's all these divisions within the family about what to do about this sale. But they're on this cruise celebrating some kind of anniversary of the show, and so there's all these fans on board, and there's lots of culture war stuff is really what it's talking about. But yeah, fantastic read, very funny, very astute, all the stuff you would expect from Chris Brookmyre, who I think has been working like at his best lately. Yeah. The Cracked Mirror. Is that just last year? The Cracked Mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what a fantastic book. Amazingly ambitious. Yeah, brilliant.
I spoke to Chris and his wife Marissa, who write as Ambrose Parry.
I love Ambrose Parry as well. Like it's
I
so
nearly
good.
included the latest
Yeah.
Ambrose Parry on our choices, but and he said that writing with Marissa for Ambrose Parry completely changed him as a writer for the better, and he couldn't have written The Cracked Mirror
Mm.
before then. You know, he had to do that kind of process of sharing, if you like, and writing in the way that they do before he could write something like The Cracked Mirror, which is two very distinct kind of
Yeah.
central characters. I haven't read this yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be talking to Chris at the Beacon Book Festival, which is in Greenock and Port Glasgow later in 2026. So I can't wait for that. I can't think of a novel or a writer who announced themselves in the first couple of sentences as quite ugly one morning did with Kieran Whitmire. And if you don't know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
go and check it out for yourself. It's a sensational opening.
Mhm.
It's what a way to declare yourself on the
Yes.
on
On
the
the literary scene.
I'm going to mention just a few others. I've got we mentioned Alan Gore right at the
Mhm.
start. The fourth in the Jack Cuthbert series is coming out, and in the new year. In fact, yeah, it may. Yeah, I'm not sure when, but it is coming out. Shadows in the Dust, back in London, so you'll get to the characters you may have missed into The Shades Descend will be back and around them, and it's quite a good coterie. I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't read it yet. Similarly, here's the return of a character, is Rilke's third one. It's Louise Welsh, The Cut Up. Now, the cutting room for me was just, changed a lot of the way I wanted to read books. You know, I think it changed a lot of the landscape of Scottish
Uh,
literature. A real crime book, but a real literary crime book, showing you parts of Glasgow that had very rarely been seen before as
mhm.
well. Um, from the West End to the kind of city centre and the kind of darker places too.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
hu hugely influential book on myself and I think most crime writers working at the time, and
yeah,
certainly of my generation.
and it was a standalone for a long time, and then a
Uh-huh.
couple of years ago, Rilke was brought back.
Yeah, popped back after 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And I just it was so great to see him again and meet him again, spend time with this complex character.
Uh-huh.
See,
Yeah, I mean I reread the first one not long ago actually, and yeah, just what a book. So brilliant. Like it makes me think of like 8mm, that film with Nicolas Cage.
yeah,
It was the film that what's the guy's name? Joel Schumacher. He directed that terrible Batman film, the
that's
really
right.
bad one. And then
Yeah,
off the back of that, he did 8mm, which is just so different and fantastic. And then yeah, the cutting room makes me think of that, but very
yeah,
Glasgow.
very much so. And yeah, so it's great to have a new novel from Louise Welsh, and even better that it's a Rilke novel.
Hmm.
And the final book I want to talk about is one I don't really know much about, Linda Duncan McLaughlin, but it's out with Into Books. It's called Original Sins, and it's a psychological thriller. What will I say? So Joanne Marshall's adoptive mother passes away. The tenuous threads of her past unravel, drawing her into a haunting quest for truth. Um, I don't read a lot of out and out psychological thrillers, so I'm kind of really looking forward to this. And it's quite nice actually to look forward to a writer that I don't know anything about.
Mhm.
I'm fresh to it because I think everyone we've mentioned, I mean, there's a few debuts there, debuts which have done really well far and wide,
Mhm.
which is great. So it's always good to find out
Yeah,
who
certainly.
else is coming through.
Yeah, I think like the debut Bloody Scotland year this year was brilliant.
Yeah,
Just I don't know how they chose a winner, to be honest with you, because I've read a few of those books and they were all great.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if people want to know more about that, we spoke to them all for the Scots Way podcast just before Bloody Scotland. Callum, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been an absolute treat.
No, thank you very much for having me. I better head and see my dog. She's feeling neglected. I
There
think
you
she's
go.
yapping away.
And we'll be back soon with, I think, the best music of 2025 podcast.